Of the original four FNaF games, FNaF 3 was definitely the black sheep. It only had one animatronic you could die to, Springtrap, and the mechanics entirely centered around him, as opposed to the other games where you were trying to multitask and keep tabs on multiple characters. At first I didn't like it, because it didn't fit the aesthetics or gameplay or timeline of the other games. But now that I'm 8 years older, I can appreciate it, and in fact, I appreciate it so much that I believe it's the best game in the series. I'm going to split this video into two sections, gameplay and story. The gameplay has you working in Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction, meant to profit off nostalgia from people who were kids when Freddy Fazbear's was still open, based on the urban legend surrounding the place, with actual relics tracked down from abandoned Freddy's locations. You arrive at the job just before your employer, the phone dude, and his team get an anonymous tip about a secret room where they find, as they say, a real one.
We found one. A real one.
You've got no idea what this thing is, but you're stuck with it for 4 nights and a bonus nightmare night. However, that's not all you've got to deal with. You're monitoring the place, practicing to play the role of security guard in the soon-to-open attraction, with barely functional equipment.
In trying to make the place feel vintage, we may have overdone it a bit. Some of this equipment is barely functional. Yeah, I wasn't joking about the fire. That's a real risk.
Your camera shows you about 90% static, the video and audio systems are prone to malfunction, and sometimes the ventilation fails and you have to reboot it so you don't start hallucinating so much you die. You have a reboot panel where you can fix audio, video, and ventilation, but it takes forever. The hallucinations come in the form of the Phantom animatronics, and this is where I think the gameplay is truly genius. Although Springtrap is the only animatronic that actually exists and can kill you, there are several hallucinations of burned and charred versions of old characters from the first 2 games, which can attack you and force the ventilation to go out. You can avoid most of these jump scares, but sometimes you're just left to deal with them. Thing is, especially when you first play the game and don't know the mechanic, the Phantoms are terrifying, and you have no idea what's going on or what you're supposed to do. They put you in a panic, and put you in a worse situation in the gameplay. The first 2 games induced panic when you got jump scared, the first few times, but after a while they hit the point of just making you angry that you lost several minutes of progress through the night. They come to represent frustration over fear. The Phantoms are the perfect fix for this issue because they don't make you lose, they put you at risk of losing.
I'm alive! Why am I alive?
You're panicking not because a scary bear just popped up on the screen, you're panicking because you're trying to deal with the overwhelmingly stressful consequences of that jump scare. Side note, FNaF 4 reincorporated non-lethal jump scares with Foxy and Mangle popping out at you if they're far enough along in the closet, incentivizing you to not even check before closing it, and it turned listening in a quiet environment for a loud sound, effectively a jump scare, into the method by which you check if an animatronic is right in front of you. The other thing I love about FNaF 3's gameplay is that, well, the first game didn't force you into a gameplay loop. You were free to use whatever strategy you wanted, but people quickly found that gameplay loops were the best way to get by. FNaF 2 basically did force you into this loop if you wanted to survive at all, but even that didn't guarantee survival in the later nights. Top-level gameplay won't guarantee a victory in Golden Freddy mode, and that's incredibly frustrating. It also means that you're just kind of along for the ride in the gameplay, there's no decision-making process. FNaF 3 cuts through all this and eliminates the gameplay loop entirely. You're just focusing on one animatronic, and it is completely random when and by what you're distracted from that task. There is no gameplay loop. In an ideal scenario, you'd keep Springtrap in view of the camera of your choice with the nearest vent sealed, and you can use the opportunity between his movements to reboot one of your functions, but as the nights progress, this window of opportunity will shrink as your need to reboot things goes up, and you really don't have time to focus on everything. There is a decision-making process here, and the panic induced by the Phantoms challenges your ability to make strategic decisions. It also makes it harder to concentrate on the cameras, and the cameras are the third place where FNaF 3's gameplay comes to life. In the first game, they tried to make you look at all the cameras, but people quickly figured out looking at Pirate Cove was a great strategy, and then when people realized Foxy was delayed by you viewing any camera, the strategy changed to just looking at the East Hall corner. Either way, the strategy never requires you to switch your camera. Then in the second game, they gave you a flashlight to brighten up the cameras, so they must have wanted you to look at them at least a little bit, but they also put a button you need to hold down on one specific camera or else you would die. So that seems a little counterproductive.
I don't know how important this is, but I'm gonna do it as if it's the most important thing.
Everyone is always on the prize counter because you needed to be there, especially after night, 2. FNaF 3 is the only game that actually gets you to use all of them, because Springtrap can wander anywhere. There are 15 cameras total, 10 on the main layer and 5 on the vent layer, and outside the vent, Springtrap can appear in multiple positions per camera, meaning you have to actually look around and look closely. It's even debatable which camera is optimal to have Springtrap at. Cameras 9 and 10 are the furthest away, but they both have vents, both of which can't be sealed at the same time, whereas camera 7 only has one vent nearby. Cameras 8 and 6 don't have one, and the audio lure on camera 7, if I'm not mistaken, can lure Springtrap even if he's on camera 5. And camera 5 is useful because it's in the center of the map, and it's very accessible, so luring him there is good if you lose track of him, but it puts you in a compromising position where Springtrap has multiple avenues to get you. FNaF 3 succeeds at making jump scares scary, at making the player actually use all of the cameras and look around the whole establishment, and at not turning into a mindless gameplay loop, all of which were problems in the first 2 games. And I'm not saying these were problems with subsequent playthroughs of the first 2 games. They start popping up by the time you hit night 5, and they're apparent throughout night 6 and definitely night 7. Why do you think FNaF 3 had no custom night besides plot reasons? Oh yeah, this game has a plot, and it's pretty good. After each night you get sent to a retro minigame where you get to walk around as a new animatronic, starting with Freddy. As you explore the establishment, you realize it's the restaurant from the first game. The map layout is nearly identical. You're led by this mysterious purple Freddy, who die-hard fans of the second game's propensity for Easter eggs will recognize as the still to this day unsolved Shadow Freddy. If you go where he leads you, you'll find a room above the bathroom hallway, which didn't exist in FNaF 1. You can't see it on the map anyway. Where is that? Oh, never mind, we can't go in there anyway. It just says error. Well, I guess I'll just— Holy shit! We're ambushed by this figure who fans of the second game's difficulty and constant post-death cutscenes will recognize as the Purple Guy, aka the killer of these children who possess the animatronics, known to the people in the future as William Afton. And he just dismantled Freddy with his bare hands. That is, Purple Guy's bare hands, not to be confused with Freddy's bare hands. Welp, that just happened. Time for night 2. The same thing happens after night 2, 3, and 4, where we play as Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, before being led to our inevitable destruction, with the remains of our friends right there on the floor. Purple Guy is destroying all these animatronics, but why? And wait, all of a sudden it makes sense. These animatronics are in pieces throughout the establishment, and the phone dude doesn't even think they're real.
The Foxy head, which we think could be authentic, then again it might just be another crappy cosplay.
The freight crew must have found them in this destroyed state after the events of the first game. Speaking of phone dude, he abandons us on night 2. Turns out when he searched there the second time, he found some old training cassettes, which he thinks would be funny to play over the loudspeaker, which means we get to hear...
Hello? Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Just when we thought we were free of the phone guy. He shows up again in this game, and every call after night 2 is one of his tapes. This is the earliest incarnation we hear of the character, from what we can gather, as this is in Freddy's era of Springlock suits. The first tape covers Springlock suit safety. Basically, Fazbear Entertainment didn't want to spend money on costumes for live performers and animatronics, so they combined them into one. The idea was that in animatronic mode, they function as a robot and walk toward the noise of crowds to entertain people, but you can turn them to suit mode by using a hand crank to recoil the Springlocks holding the internal metal endoskeleton inside, and compressing them around the sides of the suit, meaning you can climb in and be safe. The obvious safety issue being that if the Springlocks were to fail, then the endoskeleton parts would slide back into place, which would spell trouble for the employee inside. The second tape does not provide words of comfort in this matter.
Try not to nudge or press against any of the Springlocks inside the suit. Do not touch the Springlocks at any time. Do not breathe on the Springlocks, as moisture may loosen them and cause them to break loose. In the case that the Springlocks come loose while you are wearing the suit, please try to maneuver away from populated areas before bleeding out.
It also explains that each Freddy's location has one extra room just for employees, that's hidden away from customers, isn't in the animatronic's internal map, and is always off camera. Wait, that explains what that room is that the animatronics can't enter, where the Purple Guy is hiding. That makes sense why it wasn't seen in the first game then. The third tape gives us a helpful update on the Springlock suits.
There's been a slight change of company policy concerning use of the suit. Don't. After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, the company has deemed the suit temporarily unfit for employees.
Oh, it turns out someone was either injured or killed by one of these things, and apparently that's enough for Fazbear Entertainment to retire them temporarily. Wait, a suit that skewered a human body inside? Now that the phone guy mentions it, Springtrap does seem to have a few human elements. Are those... Nah, I'm reading too much into it. The fourth tape reminds us what the safe rooms are for. It's nothing we don't already know, but he emphasizes how we shouldn't ever bring customers into the safe room. Huh. Also, apparently the Spring Bonnie animatronic was noticeably moved despite the explicit banning of those suits. And, okay, now they've confirmed there's a Spring Bonnie animatronic. As in one of the death suits that skewers people is a variant of Bonnie. Huh. There's definitely a dead body in there. But hey, now we've completed Night 5. We just played as Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and saw them all get destroyed, so I wonder if this time we'll be... a ghost. No one's leading us anywhere, but I think we know where to go by now. And in there, we find the purple guy who we expected to see, with 4 ghosts standing behind us in solidarity. We're the missing children, and our spirits were just released. We also see a golden Bonnie suit, presumably Spring Bonnie. We chase the purple guy around for a little bit. He gets into the Spring Bonnie suit. Everything clicks in this moment. The character we've been fighting off for the whole game, without even knowing it, was the child murderer this whole series revolves around. We're fighting the main villain of the series. This explains the trailer. He will come back. He always does. We have a place for him. They show Springtrap writhing in pain, sitting on the floor, presumably the floor of the safe room. He sat there for the 30-year gap between the first game and this one, in anguish. Like he deserves. The phone guy even mentioned that moisture can set off the Springlocks, and we see it raining when the purple guy gets skewered. The Springlock suits in animatronic mode turn and walk towards sounds they hear, which is why we're able to lead Springtrap around using audio lures mimicking a child's voice. Everything makes sense. The game introduces 3 critical mystery elements: the question of what Springtrap is, the minigames where purple guy destroys the animatronics, and the phone guy's tapes. And these mysteries all start off disconnected, but here, in one glorious moment, all 3 of them collapse together in one definitive answer. An answer that's satisfying in more ways than one. If you were not there when we, as a community, discovered that the purple guy was Springtrap, then I cannot describe to you with words how jaw-dropping this was. The only things left are how Springtrap wasn't discovered sooner, and what the Phantom animatronics and their burned, charred appearance mean. Both are answered in Night 6, where we finally get to face off against Springtrap and know exactly what we're up against, and what the stakes are if we get caught. The phone guy's 5th and final tape tells us that the safe rooms are being boarded up and a false wall is being created over it. At the very end of the game, the final newspaper tells us that Fazbear's Fright has burned to the ground. We can only assume how long our protagonist has been thinking of setting fire to the place, ending William Afton forever, if these are the hallucinations he's been having. In conclusion, FNaF 3 does what the first 3 games all set out to do, but which the first 2 failed at. The gameplay is deep, scary, panic-inducing, and avoids being repetitive or boiling down to following a pattern. It tells an actual story while being at no shortage of mysteries for fans to spend years solving, and the way the story is told creates one of the most defining moments in the entire lore. My only criticism of this game is that I'm not that big a fan of the color green. FNaF 3 is by far the best FNaF game. And that's without even mentioning the impact of the good ending. Hey everyone, if you haven't seen my community posts, I just got a new PC. I'm restarting my editing folders since on the old one they were an absolute mess. That's why this video was a bit lower effort, and I'm curious what you guys thought of that. Do you want to see more videos in this style if it means they come out more often? I'll likely decide what I want to do depending on the kind of video, the topic, etc. If you enjoyed, then hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed, and look out for more videos. Bye!